Jones leaks out. Williams trying to get it. Gets away enough to launch it. Just like last week, Dorian Singer this time into Nevada territory.
Are you kidding me?
On the tackle.
Here's the previous play as SC hurries it up. You're thinking Caleb Williams throwing it down out of bounds. Eyes to your point down the field. How about the location of the ball and then the focus?
Hey everybody, this is Nerd Boy, and this is going to be Dynasty Degens Rookie Profiler Series. I am joined today by Mr. Jay Stein at _ Jason Stein. Jay, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Excited to be here with you, talking 24 rookie prospects, man.
Yeah, I appreciate you joining me, man. And you are an analytics guy, so I think we were talking backstage a little bit about your process and how you pretty much dive into these prospects, and it's a different world than what I'm used to. You know, I'm watching all 22 tape from, you know, their freshman year and then going up, and it's just, I like hearing the other side and getting that the peek behind the curtain. But you chose some big hitters today. So today we are talking Caleb Williams, Caleb Williams Jr. out of USC. He is coming in at 6'1", 215 pounds. His 23 stats for throwing were 3,633 yards, 30 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. I don't know if there's much more we can say about Caleb Williams from a tape perspective. Like for me, when I see Caleb Williams, I think like a hyper elite composite arm. He's got great flexibility. He pretty much can throw at any angle, and I don't want to throw it out there, but you know, you see the Mahomes type arm angles, you see all that, and he's a fun prospect for sure, but his arm strength is effortless. He can throw, like you just saw the clip there, he goes on the run and he can just bomb it for 50 yards, and it just seems like, you know, he doesn't even need his feet planted for a throw like that, where, you know, an average quarterback would need to really see a clean pocket to make a throw like that. So, but yeah, he's a special guy. He's got special awareness in the pocket. He's a natural field processor. There's, you know, I could go on and on about what I love about Caleb Williams, but I know that Jay, like I said, he is analytics and he has a really good process, and I really want to hear about that. So Jay, tell me why you picked Caleb Williams and what you really like about him as a prospect.
Yeah, so Caleb Williams is one of my favorite quarterback prospects. It's I have this whole like numbers process and everything like that, and he grades out one of the highest that I've have in my QB prospect model for a long time, since basically Trevor Lawrence. And so this is just an incredible profile. And so the way I come at it, I have two different outlets kind of where I'm putting my work out. I got the Football Guys, which we just put out the 2024 Football Guys rookie guide. And it has 150 prospects, and that is a labor of love from Jeff Bell, Christian Williams, and Kevin Coleman. And it gives you basically all of those rookie prospects. Caleb Williams is our #1 quarterback in that model. What I do is this tiny little piece called the Analytics Index, and you can find all the data and everything that's behind that in the Debbie Royale Patreon. And so for Caleb Williams in general, my process is basically 1 out of 100. But if you're in the 90s, you're a pretty good QB prospect. And I have Caleb Williams at around a 97, almost a perfect prospect, and the highest graded prospect I have in all of this 2024 class. So just a quick on the player card, what we have at these Football Guys things, some strengths and weaknesses of Caleb Williams. So the strengths that Christian does a really good job of these QB breakdowns are arm strength and talent. He can make basically every throw on the field. Ball placement and accuracy, he's awesome at that. And he basically has this playmaking ability, specifically out of structure plays. That's really, really impressive. And then the weaknesses, he plays hero ball a little bit, causing too many negative plays. Fumbles and ball security, which actually does show up in the number. Those fumbles is maybe one of those areas that I would say that maybe could be a little bit of concern. And he can be a little bit over aggressive to try and fit things in tight windows. So I'll just walk you a little bit through my process, but the stuff that I put emphasis on are draft capital, production, age, film, advanced stats, and size for quarterbacks. Draft capital actually makes up about 40%. We know Caleb Williams is probably going to be the first pick overall unless something really weird happens, and deserves to be the first pick overall because of this prospect profile. And being that number 1 overall pick does come with some of the benefits in this model. And I think that number 1 overall pick generally tends to have a good chance of being successful in the NFL. So I think that weighs heavily into the process. The next piece, size, it's a very small piece of the process, but generally I look for quarterbacks that are 6'2" and taller and 220 pounds and heavier. Caleb Williams is 6'1", 216. That 216 might end up being 220. That's unverified. That's from the USC's website. 6'1", 216. I've seen it anywhere from 218 above 220. I've seen him less than 216 at 215. So it's actually not that big of a deal. It's not that big of something that makes a difference here, but it is just something that's like those little tiny knocks. When we do the next one, we're going to talk about Drake May. He fits the size profile perfectly. So this is just one area where you can point to where there's just a little bit of like, if he was 1 inch taller and 4 pounds heavier, it would be perfect. But not every prospect can be perfect. And size is one of those least important parts to be perfect on, in my opinion, and especially what we've seen over time. But it's nice to have a little bit taller, a little bit heavier quarterback, especially if you're running. The next piece is age. I generally tend to look for early declares. For quarterbacks, it's not as important for them to get that first year of production, but I'd love to see 2 years of production at least, especially if you're early declare a 3-year. Caleb Williams has 3 years, which is actually very unusual. It's very unusual for quarterbacks to start all 3 years and to succeed, be very successful all 3 years. So that is very unusual, and I'll comment on that in a little bit. But yeah, 3-year. He is a little bit older for a 3-year. He'll be 22 on draft day, which is actually Drake May is actually going to be 21. So just an interesting point there. But he is a 3-year, which is what is most important to me. From a production perspective, this is actually a decent portion, just like draft capital production, a little bit of decent portion of this model. The things that I look at are QBR, which is an ESPN stat. EPA per play, adjusted yards per pass attempt, and rush yards market share. Of course, rush yards market share, because now we're focused as a fantasy industry on quarterbacks that do have the ability to rush. So I want to make sure that we capture that as well. So QBR for Caleb Williams, I'm looking at these on an age adjusted basis, and these are all campus to Canton stats or PFF stats. The QBR, I'm looking at an age-adjusted basis for years 1, 2, and 3. He's well above what I look for in what would kind of say he would go on to be a top 12 quarterback. So it sort of signifies that, being above the line. When I say above the line, the line is what average QBs with top 12 NFL seasons have. And Caleb Williams for years 1, 2, and 3 was above the line in a QBR. Then EPA per play, again, years 1, 2, and 3. This is actually coming down a bit, but he is well above the line for all 3 of those. So, generally you'd like to see the trend be sort of upward trajectory. Caleb Williams really had his best years in 1s and 2, and year 3 was a little bit of a down year, but still year 3 was great and is still meeting all these analytical thresholds that we're looking at. The next one is adjusted yards per attempt. And again, all 3 years above the line. And finally, rush yards market share. The first 2 years above the line. The 3rd year was a tail off. So this is basically his market share of the team's rushing yards. And for year 3, it tailed off a little bit. So it came down and it ended up below the line for that year 3. It was about 7% of his team's rushing market share, whereas first 2 seasons on a games played adjacent basis is 16% and 20%. So, it did tail off a little bit from there. I'm looking at film grades. His PFF film grades were pretty great. If you look at some of the draft pundits, they look pretty good as well. And then the advanced stats. So the PFF advanced stats that I focus in on, big time throw percentage, Caleb Williams, I'm looking for something over 4%, greater than equal 4%. On average, Caleb Williams was 6.2% for his career. Turnover worthy plays, I'm looking for something that's less than 3%. Caleb Williams was 2.6% on average for his 3 years. And adjusted completion percentage, I'm looking for something above 20%, or I'm sorry, 72% average. And Caleb Williams was about a 76% average for those things. And if you have any questions, if you want me to go through any of the definitions of EPA per play or big time throw or turnover worthy plays or any of that stuff, what any of that stuff means, I'd be happy to do that. But I'll kind of sum up here with, sort of like a player comparison type of thing. What we have in the rookie guide that Christian put together for this QBs is they have him as a comparison as Aaron Rodgers, which is a kind of lofty comparison. What I see is more of like a bigger Kyler Murray, and that's kind of how I view it. With maybe not as elite from a rushing perspective as Kyler Murray is, but sort of that same sort of play style, and just maybe just a slightly bigger. But he's not he's not very thin from a size perspective. He's still pretty bulky, even though like he doesn't meet exactly the size that I'm looking for. He doesn't have like those concerns that maybe like a Jaden Daniels would have. And then from a production perspective, like going through all those QBR, EPA per play and stuff like that, this production profile looks a ton like Trevor Lawrence. The dots move incredibly close together over the 3 years. And Trevor Lawrence was one of those guys that started 3 years, came out early, and was the first overall pick. So like that whole story makes a lot of sense. I'm not saying they play exactly the same way. I'd say Caleb plays a little bit more like Kyler Murray than he plays Trevor Lawrence, but that's the type of prospect that you got to think about when you think about Caleb Williams and what he can be in the NFL.
Yeah. I mean, I don't need the explanation for EPA, but I think listeners might. Like they might be curious. If you want to just, break it down a little bit, just so that people can digest this as easily as possible, that'd be great.
Yeah. So I ran through a whole bunch of numbers really quick, and I'll be happy to do that. So EPA, it measures the value of individual plays by calculating the expected points scored based on the down, distance, field position, situation at the start of a play, and contrast that with the situation at the end of the play. So basically, your team is expected to score this amount of points where you are based on the situation of the game at that moment, right? And then you, being a quarterback, pass it to a wide receiver. So you are involved in this play, right? And now you have a different expected points. And the subtraction between when the play finished and when the play started is your expected points added. So that's what was added. And then you divide that by the total plays. So you can imagine like how that looks different for a running back, because maybe they're not involved in each play. Quarterback's involved in more of the plays. Wide receiver, how they would be involved in that. But that's kind of how that's calculated. QBR is something that ESPN does. It does a lot of those same things. The adjusted yards per attempt, the standard yards per attempt is normal, but this one adjusted one incorporates a premium for touchdowns and a discount for interceptions. So you're kind of like adjusting for some of the better plays. And then the big time throws and turnover worthy plays, I get that a lot. What does that mean? These are PFF stats. You can actually go, if you have PFF subscription, you can go and look and see what they are. There's lots of articles that are written about them. But a big time throw is a pass with excellent ball location and timing, generally thrown further down the field or into a tighter window. And a turnover play is a pass that has a high percentage chance to be intercepted or a poor job of taking care of the ball and fumbling. So that's kind of the idea of a lot of those things.
Yeah. I mean, I love that. I love, if people have to listen to this, like some people listen to pods 2 times, like fast. I think you have to slow this one down and consume it slower and really like dive into, what you're hearing here, because you had said that he's your highest graded prospect ever at quarterback. Did I hear that? Or
for a while. It's been a while since we've seen one.
Since Trevor Lawrence, right? Or
yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. Exactly. So just so that people have an idea, what did the grading look like last year? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
that's a good way to kind of see like how this works and stuff.
Yeah, so the tiers, I would say for if you're combining tier 1 from this year and last year, tier 1 in this year is Caleb Williams and Drake May, and tier 1 in last year was CJ Stroud and Bryce Young. And the major difference between the two groups right now is that CJ and Bryce did not meet the thresholds for rush yards market share. In fact, CJ Stroud only had 400 rushing yards for his entire career. Bryce Young was like 700 rush yards. Drake May and Caleb Williams, they both had that much in one season. So they basically had 3 years of having achieved this threshold for all 3 seasons, except for Caleb Williams that 3rd year. But basically they were able to show that they could run the ball. So the way that I would have them ranked, I'd have Caleb Williams, and then it would be the way that it would work out would be CJ Stroud and Drake May kind of lined up perfectly with each other, and then Bryce Young would be after that. But those would all be tier 1. So those guys I would all say have a high likelihood of being successful NFL quarterbacks. So yeah, that's kind of how it shape up. I had Anthony Richardson in tier 2. I have Jaden Daniels in tier 2. There's lots of reasons why. We can talk about all those things, but those 4, Caleb, Drake, CJ, and Bryce, those were my high conviction tier 1 type quarterbacks in the way that I do it.
Awesome. And I think that's what makes you perfect to be on the show for these quarterbacks right now. That was Caleb Williams in a nutshell with Jay Stein. If you liked what you heard on this episode, you can find Jay Stein at Football Guys. I think you can just go to his X profile and you can find all of his stuff, I believe, pinned or located somewhere on your site, right? You post like the Football Guys rankings, and then you have some of your content over there. But you can also go to the Debbie Royale Patreon too, and you can find a lot of the good stuff over there as well. But sorry, go ahead, Jay. I cut you off there.
Yeah, Football Guys. I do a series called The Dynasty Investor there, and so there's it's an article series. So you just go on there. I do rankings as well, but you just go on there and type my name in, and it'll work. And then the Debbie Royale is like a Patreon, Discord, lots of fun guys. I have my rookie data model pinned in there that you can go and look at if you want to. But yeah, Debbie Royale's awesome. I think you're in there too. So yeah, yep. It's a good group of guys. We're always talking football. It's a fun time. So yeah, if you enjoy that stuff, definitely join in.
Well, Jay, I appreciate you joining us tonight, and we're catching you right back in a little bit for some Drake May talk. So we will see you guys in the next episode.